For several days, rain had fallen heavily upon the ground. It would appear that Freyr, the god of fertility, had finally listened to our request for rain. The farmers who lived on the outskirts of our small town had already sown the seeds for the spring crops, and now the rain would help them grow. After so many days of rain, the thatched roofs that covered our homes were heavy with moisture. The raindrops created ripples in the hundreds of muddy puddles that were now unavoidable in the narrow streets. Despite the rain, the streets were still busy. People were either going to or coming from the marketplaces. Some skilled craftspeople sold their wares from right outside their homes. I stood in the doorway and looked out at the hustle and bustle of my town. I watched as smoke from the hearths of other houses rose up into the gray sky. I caught the aroma of meat being roasted for the evening meals. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw my father as he worked. I saw him raise a hammer high into the air and then bring it down onto a piece of burning hot iron that lay upon the anvil. As the town's master blacksmith, my father was valued and known for making beautiful, strong, reliable items out of metal, such as swords, jewelry, and keys. He was admired for his physical strength and wise counsel. It was because of him I suddenly realized that I knew almost all of the families in our town, but until this very moment I had not realized how much I would miss them. "Bjorn, what are you doing? Come here and help me," came the sound of my father's booming voice. He had obviously spotted me standing in the doorway. "Yes, father," I replied as I hurried to his side. I had been working as my father's apprentice for almost 3 years. My father worked in a forge made of wood and thatch, similar to our own home. His forge was always filled with smoke, dust, and flickering flames, not to mention the sound of constant hammering. As soon as I stepped into his forge, father handed me the bellows and put me to work. "Strengthen the fire, Bjorn, I have work to do," he instructed me. I immediately began to use the bellows and watched as the flow of air fueled the flames. The more I pumped the bellows, the more the flames flickered. As the air shot into the flames, they became more intense. My father was making a number of axe heads, chisels, and nails. He explained to me that these tools would be needed when I reached Iceland. "Father, why do so many of our people leave home and travel to faraway places?" I asked as I watched him heat pieces of metal in the flames. "As you know, Bjorn, Odin has blessed our homeland with many things. We have an ocean that helps to feed us. We have rivers and fjords. Even our rugged highlands are very beautiful. Odin has showed us how to build the best ships in the world and how to sail them. Even in the darkest nights, we can look up at the stars and find our way across the most treacherous oceans. Bjorn, it is necessary for us to seek new lands. We are a mighty people. Our warriors are known as mighty Vikings. When our warriors sail across the North Sea to conquer new lands, people tremble at the very sight of our longships," he explained. "Sometimes the people who leave never come back," I replied, trying hard not to look at him. "These are changing times, my son. There is much conflict in our homeland now. For many, it is best that they leave and not return. Bjorn, you are almost 13 years of age. You are almost a man now. Soon you will take a wife, and if Tyr desires it, you will be a Viking warrior too. The assembly members have decided that you and many other young men will establish homes in a new land. It is our way, my son," he said firmly. I did not reply. Instead, I continued to fuel the fire and watch as my father heated, twisted, and shaped pieces of iron into an array of objects. He would frequently explain to me what he was doing. Like many other Norse, my father was an expert blacksmith. My father was such a skillful blacksmith, however, that he had once been accused of employing the dwarves who dwell in the deep underground reaches of the earth to make the fine weapons and tools that he produced. He had laughed aloud at this accusation and exclaimed that if anyone could find these dwarfs in his forge, they could pay them instead of him. Several times he let me work with pieces of molten metal. These were the best times, the times when my father taught me the skills that his father had taught him. I just wish there was a way that I could stay in my homeland with my people. Outside the forge, daylight was disappearing and twilight was creeping in. Eventually, as the light faded, my father looked up from his work and put his tools away. "Time to eat," he said in a gruff voice, but then he ruffled my hair. "Let's go see what your grandmother has cooked for us tonight," he continued. "I already know what it is," I replied. "I helped catch it." "It's hare stew," I said, laughing. Then, with his arms around my shoulders, my father and I began to walk toward our home, tempted by the smell of cooking. "You are now old enough, and tomorrow I will begin to make your sword," my father said. "You are honored, Bjorn. Very few carls own a sword. It is a gift from Lord Toki to you. You must name it wisely." "I know that, father. You saved Lord Toki's life, and that is why I am being given this honor." "The sword really belongs to you," I said, all the while staring at my feet. "I have a sword. It is the sword my father gave to me," he said proudly. "You will give this sword to your first son and tell him the story of where it came from and why you have it. That is how we record our history. Now let us go and eat some hare stew." And with that, we entered our home and took our places around the hearth and the rest of our family members.